From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Well, the recall election is happening in California. I tell you, I don't really understand this thing because, as I understand it, tell me if I'm wrong. If Governor Newsom doesn't get 50% or more, if he falls below that threshold, then the highest polling Republican, so a Republican could become governor with 28% of the vote, even if Newsom gets 49%? Tell me if I'm mistaken somewhere, but that's my understanding, and that's insane. This is crazy. And speaking of crazy, Larry Elder saw this headline yesterday on CNN Politics. Baselessly raises possibility of election shenanigans in California recall. Yeah, it's not just the Orange Menace. It's the whole damn party, from top to bottom. Republican candidate Larry Elder told reporters on Wednesday that he believes there might very well be shenanigans in the election to recall California Governor Gavin Newsom, continuing the baseless GOP effort to undermine elections by suggesting wrongdoing. Elder, the leading Republican candidate to replace Newsom if the recall is successful, made the comments shortly after he voted for himself in Los Angeles County. He said he believes the shenanigans would be similar to those that happened during the 2020 election in which President Joe Biden defeated former President Donald Trump. There was no evidence of widespread election fraud in that election. Of course, thank you for including that in the text there at CNN Politics. No matter what they do, so many Californians are angry about what's going on. I have a love-hate relationship with California, but the very idea that this band of yahoos in the Republican Party, liars, cheats, fascists, arch-conservative right-wingers, if they take this, God help us all. And yeah, okay, so let's just call fraud and jump on that big lie. Jair Bolsonaro is doing the same thing down in Brazil with elections coming up. He's already, I don't think they're even that soon. I think they're still a year away. I forget. But the point is, he's already laying the groundwork, as the Orange Menace did a full year before his election, or before his defeat, I should say, laying the groundwork that, oh, well, if I lose, it's only because of cheating. Here again, I'm just begging you, listen to the lefties. We were the ones pointing this out at the very first utterances. We're the people always sounding the warnings, and nobody ever listens. We saw it coming. So, okay, that's happening in California, and let's cross our fingers. Early returns so far, they're in the process of voting now. According to the data they've been able to gather, 53% of the 6.4 million ballots returned so far have come from Democrats, while Republicans have returned 25% of the ballots. All right, so that's something. There's some numbers, but like I say, 53% from Democrats. We better get those numbers up, because there are two things to vote for. First, should the governor be recalled? And then if so, who's your candidate? So that's the threshold that needs to be met. And unless I'm terribly mistaken, I ask you to please correct me if I'm wrong. Newsom has to break that 50% barrier, or the top Republican candidate, regardless of his total or her total. I say his because it looks like Elder is the clear favorite, conservative talk show host. Then a Republican sits in the governor's mansion. Well, okay. See what else is happening around the world. Oh, you know what? Let's see, was it Tuesday night it premiered? Is that right? Yeah. Tuesday night on PBS, the latest Frontline. And I'm going to highly recommend that you seek it out. Check your local listings or better yet, just go online. It's streaming as we speak. You can just load her up. The title of this episode of Frontline, America After 9/11. From September 11 to January 6, how the Capitol insurrection was the logical endpoint of the 9/11 era. So, as is typical with Frontline, they're biting off a very big chunk. They're starting with 9/11, they're ending with January 6th, and everything in between. So there's only so much you can do in 2 hours, and they do an excellent job. I'm a fan of the Frontline series, documentary series, and I often recommend it to you. And one of the reasons I like Frontline, even though they're not fully committed to the lefty agenda, they're absolutely fair. I give them credit. And often not in a, that overly fair way where you both sides everything and you get nothing out of it. No, they just go straight to the truth as best they understand it. They don't try to do this false balance thing. They're a little timid for my taste, but that's fine. I understand that. I'm extreme in that regard, and most media is going to be a little timid for my taste. So, having said that, given that, they really do a great job. And they cover everything. If you're young and maybe you don't know the 20-year history, if you're old enough to remember all of it, it's going to be a good reminder. It's a great consolidation of the facts. And for my money, they pretty much uphold my point of view that it was a tragic mistake right from the get-go. The fact that they didn't take advantage of the great love and support the U.S. got from the whole rest of the world. There were other ways to respond after 9/11 other than having this wild militaristic response and send in tanks and planes and start killing and bombing people. It was never the way to do it. One thing that the documentary I think is a little short on, they don't give quite enough time or any time to the dissenting voices. Yes, they show some protests and they talk to a couple of protesters and people who didn't, were against the war. One or two, very few really, on the Afghan war, more so with the Iraqi war. I myself was part of many demonstrations back in the day. But what they failed to mention, and I feel compelled to remind you, there were plenty of voices. The real left, if I can use that term. We knew, we were warning, again, warnings from the left all the time. Don't do this. This is not the right response. Don't send in the military. We can protect the nation and bring justice to the evildoers by squeezing them economically and diplomatically. Again, you and I have talked about this before. The whole world was with us. There were other options. Rather than having this war frenzy, voices on the left were warning in the clearest terms that it wouldn't solve anything. It will only make things worse. It'll only make the so-called war on terror will only create more terrorists, will only create more enemies around the world. There is no military solution in Afghanistan. There never was. And the left was warning this country that very thing from day one, and almost no one listened. But go back to the archives. Go back to Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. She was hammering this point day after day after day on her program, bringing in expert guests. The entire left media sphere, from John Nichols at Nation, Mother Jones, KPFA in Berkeley, independent radio. Just name the lefty media outlet, and every one of them was absolutely on the money. So this little I told you so is not 2020 hindsight. It's not in retrospect. It's saying, yes, don't you see? We were right from the beginning. And of course, the horrible decisions about the Iraq War and the lies about WMD, the whole bit. So this is a really great documentary. Again, if you're young, maybe you don't know some of this history. If you need a little reminder. And what's very interesting is they draw a straight line from September 11th to January 6th, 2021. and the rise of the right wing, the rise of hate crimes, anti-immigration, not just pro-military, but this sort of military fetish, this crazy notion, this totally unfounded idea that the U.S. military could somehow make things better. The idea that Afghanistan and Iraq could be transformed into these Western-style democracies, it was all insane. It was all foolishness. So I'm going to point out a couple of other small faults as you watch the documentary, the Frontline piece. Again, mostly very good, but they skip a couple of pretty important factors. One, as I mentioned, they didn't really cover the lefties and how we tried to warn you. They didn't talk much about the military-industrial complex and this whole labyrinth of contractors, Halliburton being the most infamous name among them, and all the money. Oh my God, the money, the billions and billions. And by the time it was over, trillions of dollars poured into this, and how much of that went to, of course, contractors and military suppliers. And, they were setting up McDonald's and KFCs over in Baghdad and elsewhere. The military contractors, the private enterprise that profited from this 20-year forever war on terror, is kind of mind-blowing. And the documentary really doesn't get into that at all. So I think they really missed an opportunity there. Yes, of course, 20 years is a long time to cover in 2 hours. But I think this was a miss. Two other things missing. The whole story of the surveillance state and how Rumsfeld and Cheney and Bush were caught in the act, quite literally, by whistleblowers in constructing this domestic surveillance. And that's something else that didn't get mentioned. That or the whistleblowers and their role in uncovering not only the surveillance, but also through WikiLeaks. That's the first time, the only time, without them we wouldn't have seen video from these drone strikes killing civilians. So they missed a couple of really important points. And finally, never once mentioned the Afghanistan papers in a 2-hour documentary. How does that happen? The Afghanistan papers, which were revealed just a few short years ago, showed us how the top leadership in various administrations and in the military, making it very clear, they're talking to each other, saying things like, we don't know what we're doing. We have no idea how to get out of this. There's no way. We're losing. They're winning. While at the same time, and I don't have to tell you this, you know this, right? While at the very same time, presidents and secretaries of state and secretaries of defense were standing up in front of the American people telling us that we've got them on the run and ISIS is nothing and don't worry and we're winning, and just lying. All three presidents just lying. So I'm going to recommend that you go to pbs.org and you watch this Frontline documentary. But have those things in mind, because as we all, we know around here, PBS is better than most, but it's still corporate media. They still have their big hedge funds doing the underwriting and have their corporate sponsors. Relative to the rest of the field, PBS is top notch. And relative to all of PBS, Frontline documentary series is about the best they've got. So I recommend it, but keep those things in mind. And I guess I should mention before I get off of this, let me just reiterate what I've said before, but maybe a little more clearly. I'm absolutely with President Joe on getting out. 100%. The way he did it, the manner in which he did it, there's plenty of room to criticize, and both things can be true at the same time. Yes, he kind of screwed up the exit. Yes, it could have been better. And that's not me talking. I'm taking this from a wide breadth of opinion, certainly not the Republicans. You can't listen to those liars and fascists. They'll take any excuse. They're criticizing him for something he did wrong. I agree that he was wrong about it, but the manner in which they criticize is completely self-serving and mostly bogus. But there's plenty of room from both the left and the center and from military experts. There are a lot of things that could have been done better. But the fact that he got out, I and 80% of the American public are completely behind him on that. And I mentioned this, I think I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago. My thinking, and I can't be certain about this, as time passes, as days, weeks, months pass, and certainly before the 22 midterms, I don't think the exit itself, all the chaos of the exit, is going to be what's remembered. I think the fact that he took us out of the forever wars will be remembered, and they will campaign on that, and they should. They should. They have every right to campaign on that. George W. couldn't do it. Obama couldn't do it. Obama gets interesting treatment in this documentary. Not much kind to say about Obama. He sort of comes off as, he wanted to do the right thing. He just failed. He just failed miserably. He couldn't close Gitmo. He couldn't get the troops home. He tried to bring them home from Iraq. In fact, he made this big announcement. The war is over. Troops are coming home. They're all home. The last soldier has left. We saw that picture. And then within a month or two, they were back in because of all the trouble. So Obama is portrayed as not so much a villain in this story, but a failure, an absolute failure. I mean, God, 8 years. And sure, of course, he had the most uncooperative Congress of all time. But, we're not going to just let him off the hook. And they also hit him pretty hard for the drone strikes. And that's something that, boy, the capital L center left didn't want to talk about the drone strikes. He just had hundreds and hundreds and killed thousands and thousands of civilians with these damn drone strikes. Just terrorized the entire region, terrorized whole nations, because Obama continued this idea that we could strike anywhere in the world, anywhere on the whole damn planet. These were the new ground rules of the so-called war on terror. Wherever we find someone who we declare as an enemy, we can just go get them. We just gave ourselves carte blanche. All right, go. So we're dropping bombs in Yemen. We're dropping bombs right, left, and everywhere. So they're not easy on Obama. The Orange Menace, of course, I think they handled his administration accurately. I think the analysis was pretty much spot on. And that is that he used the whole war on terror and Muslim terrorists especially just to serve his own needs, which is all he ever did or continues to do. Everything is only to serve his own personal or political necessities. So he was very happy to drum up the hate of Muslims. And then they talk about the hate crimes and all of his divisiveness. And so his role is despicable. And then, of course, we know the recent history. He sends Pompeo over to the Middle East to shake hands and negotiate with the Taliban, which I remember when that happened. Just trying to imagine if that was John Kerry or Hillary Clinton shaking hands with the Taliban. Can you even imagine the kind of side-splitting screams that would be coming from the right wing if that had been the case? But it's the Orange Menace and it's Mike Pompeo, and anything goes as long as it serves us politically. And then the last thing I'll say on that, it really goes without saying. It's just so obvious. Does anyone believe that the withdrawal from Afghanistan would have been handled better by an Orange Menace administration if he had won the 2020 election? Does anybody believe that for a second? No honest person can say that. You just can't. So with all the criticism of Joe, you can say that much. I'm glad it was him and not the Orange Menace. And yeah, it was bad. It was messy, as they called it. I hate that word. It's a diminutive word. So there you go. PBS Frontline, America after 9/11, the 20 years history of this nation. Reminder, I'm going to remind you every day, I think, until it happens. Mark your calendars for October 15th and make your plans, because that is the October strike, a general strike. Every worker in America, make your plans for Friday, October 15th, and then Saturday the 16th and Sunday the 17th, and then however long it takes. A general strike for workers to have the rights and benefits that they deserve in this country. The entire working class, lower class, the poor of this country getting screwed 100 different ways by the top earners, by the CEOs, by the owning class. It's a strike and it's a boycott. You're going to refrain from all economic activity on that day, and as much as you can every day after. You're going to do it loudly and clearly and make sure everybody knows why you're striking, why you're boycotting, and the basic demands of a fair wage, health care for all, etc. A broad coalition ought to be involved here. Getting back to 9/11 for a second and the forever wars and this 20-year tragic history, new analysis tells us that airstrikes conducted by the United States have killed between 22,000 and 48,000 civilians since September 11, 2001. This according to a report published Monday by Air Wars, a military watchdog that monitors and seeks to reduce civilian harm in violent conflict zones. So this is a new finding. This is new. We've seen numbers over the years, and it's hard to pin down. I mean, between 22 and 48,000, that's a wide range. But it's quite a task to try to get these numbers down. But at the very least, 22,000 civilians. This is not even counting anyone in the fight. And up to possibly 48,000 civilians killed by airstrikes conducted by the United States. The so-called war on terror was a war of terror by the United States. Let's not whitewash this thing at all. Let's not diminish the severity, the cruelty, the evil of this 20-year history. Most media accounts point out that more than 7,000 U.S. service members have died in post-9/11 wars, but only some go on to state the massive civilian death toll, and almost exclusively in generalities, researchers lamented. While Brown University's Costs of War project estimates that over 387,000 civilians have been killed as a result of the war on terror, Airways sought to answer a specific question. How many civilians have likely been killed by U.S. airstrikes? So let's be clear. We're talking airstrikes only. Yes, other estimates, total civilians killed, an almost unimaginable number, 387,000. So we have to know this. We have to know these facts. Well, I didn't intend to spend the entire episode on this, but we are coming up on the anniversary. I don't know if I'm going to talk too much with you about it again. We've covered this mostly in an I told you so kind of vein, but there's no satisfaction. There's no happiness. It's just this urgent plea to please listen to the lefties. We're always right. We're always right about everything. We're right about the economy. We're right about war. We're right about climate crisis. We're right about the carceral state. We're right about opening borders. We're right about everything. Listen to the lefties, will you? Just, do yourself a favor. Do the world a favor. Well, speaking of the lefties, let's close with this. A little bit of good news. I'm reading a headline now from Common Dreams. New bill proposes cutting Pentagon spending to fund vaccines for poor nations. See, now, this is a lefty's dream. And at least we have some people in elected office who are actually proposing this kind of legislation. It's a baby step, maybe, because this will probably go nowhere. But at the very least, we have to have actual elected office holders to at least propose these kinds of solutions, to put them on the table, and then maybe after a year, after 2 years, it becomes more acceptable. We often point to Bernie and his 2016 agenda, and by 2020, it was standard fare, right? The stuff that sounds lefty and radical, people learn over time, oh, yeah, you're right. So I'm trying to tell you, listen to us in the first place. We'll have a lot less heartache, a lot less pain. Quote from Representative Mark Pocan of Wisconsin, my man. We can't bomb our way out of a global pandemic. Shifting funds from weaponry and military contractors to producing COVID vaccines will save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives around the world. That's Mark Pocan. He introduced legislation last week that would cut billions of dollars from the Pentagon's massive budget and invest those funds in global coronavirus vaccination efforts, which are badly lagging as rich countries continue to hoard doses and rush ahead with booster shots. The COVID Defense Act proposes transferring $9.6 billion in U.S. military spending to COVAX, a global vaccination initiative led by the World Health Organization, to assist with the procurement of doses for the people of low-income nations. Thus far, God, listen to this number, just 1.3% of people in poor countries have received at least one vaccine dose. That is unconscionable. In a press release, Pocan's office said that the funding, which represents just 1.3% of the $740.5 billion U.S. military budget approved for 2021, could lead to an additional 1.8 billion COVID vaccine doses for lower-income countries in 2021 and early 2022. If passed, Pocan's office said, the new legislation could provide vaccine access to another 30% of the world's poorest and most vulnerable populations. And I'll take it a step further. I've called for free and open use of the vaccine itself, that is the recipe, as I'm calling it, the formula. Currently, private pharma companies are holding back as intellectual property rights. Again, unconscionable. So let's take it a step further and make sure this Jonas Salk style just gets out. But I'll just leave you with this. Mark Pocan, one of the good guys. There are a few lefties in Congress doing the right thing, proposing the right thing. Does this have a chance? Probably not. Might have a chance in the House. Nancy, God bless her, she's getting a lot of pretty progressive legislation through the House, knowing full well it's going to stall in the Senate, mostly because of these two deplorables in the Senate Democratic Caucus. Of course, I'm talking about Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. They might as well be Republicans. They're just stopping everything. They're blocking everything from happening. But again, thanks to Mark Pocan, thanks to the handful of real progressives who have somehow made it through the gauntlet and actually got elected into Congress. If they can maintain their values, maintain their mission, and maintain the strength that's got them this far, maybe we can get some others to join them and finally tilt the numbers. I've said 100 times, we can't worry about Sinema and Manchin. They're set in stone. We just have to win in other places. We have to flip Ron Johnson's seat in Wisconsin. We have to flip that Republican Senate seat in Pennsylvania. There's another one. Marco Rubio is vulnerable in Florida. There might be one or two others around the nation. We get a majority in the Senate and hold the majority in the House. We could actually start getting things done. I mean, just think of it. Think of what we could do. And my advice, as it is every day on this program, go left. Follow the progressives. Let them lead. Go bold. Go big. Come on, Joe. Come on, Democrats. Follow the lead of your progressive caucus. They have the answers. We've always had the answers. Progressives always have the answers from the beginning of the history of this country. From anti-slavery, civil rights, women's rights, workers' rights, the environment, issues of war and peace, the progressives get it right every time. Look at history and start listening to us. Our track record is impeccable. All right. There you go. Go get them. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.